Good day, Grade 12 learners. Welcome to today's English First Additional lesson. My name is Marina Seeley, and this lesson is brought to you by the Gauteng Department of Education in collaboration with Saibono Discovery Centre. Today we are going to look at Paper 3, and we are going to specifically pay attention to the essay. Now, I know you've been writing essays forever, and you've most probably watched me in previous programs where we analyzed and looked at funky ways in which we can prepare for our Paper 3 and specifically the essay. Let's take a look at what we want to achieve during this lesson. Number one, we are going to look at how to select the correct topic. Then we're going to look at the process of brainstorming again. We're going to look at the selection of ideas that can be developed after the brainstorming session. Then also how to arrange those ideas into paragraphs. We are going to look at writing a striking introduction. And then we're also going to look at how we can end the essay with an effective conclusion. And then we're quickly going to refer to proofreading and editing. But before we can do that, I have a couple of questions for you. So I'm going to go through them quickly, and then I'm going to leave you for a minute or two to work out what they are, but we will keep the questions on the screen. Number one, name two aspects that you need to consider when choosing a topic. Two aspects that you need to consider when choosing a topic. Second question, what is meant by brainstorming? 3, what should you keep in mind when you write a descriptive essay? 4, indicate the main difference between a discursive and an argumentative essay. Number 5, what are the most important elements in a narrative essay? And then last but not least, indicate the required length of an essay. In other words, the number of words that you have to write. I'll give you a minute or two to respond to those questions. Very short and sweet. Do not write essays on it. Just very, very quickly jot these answers down. So, grade 12 learners, how did you do? Let's take a look at possible solutions. Number one, consider a topic that you know something about that suits your writing style or that you have enough vocabulary for. Those are three things. You had to mention any two, but these are important aspects that you have to keep in mind. If you love a specific subject, for example, let's say tourism, or you are into sport, then you would obviously have vocabulary that would be different from someone who doesn't. So that already gives you an indication you've already got the vocabulary, so use it. Any subject for that matter. You can look at business studies, you can look at life orientation, you can look at economics, you can look at geography. All of those subjects actually lend themselves to topics or word vocabulary knowledge, we call that prior knowledge, that you can use in your essays. So that is something that you know something about, and then also something that suits your writing style. Now, what I mean by that is some people are good at telling stories, and they have the ability to grab you and to take the storyline and make it intriguing, make the plot so intertwined that you would guess and that you would want to know more. Their characters are strong, and they come to a reasonable conclusion where you, as a reader, would go, "Oh, that was great." Okay, but not everyone is like that. Some of you might like describing things, you're good at that. Or, like most teenagers, you might be good at arguing about things that you feel strongly about. And then also reflective essays, that essay where you reflect on something that happened in your past and how it influenced your present and how it might influence your future. That is a reflective essay where you think about things that you experience and how that actually created the person that you are. So that is the suitable writing style. The second one, brainstorming. Now, we've referred to that in detail in previous sessions, but let me just remind you, brainstorming refers to writing down all the ideas, thoughts, words that you can think of when you look at a specific topic. I usually suggest that you choose two topics and then you would brainstorm both of them. And one of them, you would experience you hitting a wall. You know, sometimes you look at a topic and you think, oh, I can write about this. And then you are caught away in and you realize this essay has nowhere to go. And then you've wasted a lot of time. My suggestion would be select two possible ones during your reading time. And then when they say it's 9 o'clock or it's 2 o'clock, you may start. Quickly jot down thoughts and ideas that kind of pop up in your head when you are looking at those topics. And I'm sure, and I am convinced, that you would find that one topic that would actually bloom and open up so that you have almost too much to write about. So it refers to writing all your ideas, thoughts, words, even if they seem a little bit stupid. Doesn't matter. Sometimes those stupid thoughts, or that you regard as stupid, are the ones that are going to take you far. We look at the descriptive essay. You need to paint a picture with words. It's almost like explaining or describing something to a blind person. They are very aware of sound, so you must create that picture in their mind. Or to describe what you see, you might want to explain or describe your experience while you're on a trip somewhere, or you have a specific experience. Even as part of a sports team, you might describe your the thoughts and the feelings and then the vibe, if I can use that word, um, in the stadium when you are there. So anything like that. Then the next question dealt with the difference between a discursive and an argumentative essay. Remember, both of them deal with facts. The difference is that a discursive essay shows both sides of a specific point. For example, if the topic was something like, should school uniforms still be mandatory in South African schools? You can argue for and against that. In other words, you state both sides, the pros and the cons of wearing uniforms. And then right at the end, you might want to come to your own conclusion, but it has to be balanced. In contrast, the argumentative essay takes a specific stand on an issue. So there is no on the one hand and on the other hand. In an argumentative essay, you argue that school uniforms should be worn by all learners because of the reasons that you have stated. And there you take in a specific position. Then we asked about the important elements of a narrative essay, in other words, a story. Now, obviously, most important would be the plot. In other words, what is the story about? What is the problem? What needs to be solved? Who are involved? In other words, the characters who are involved. And then it will take you to paper 2, when you learn about the protagonist and the antagonist, a round character and a flat character. Because in an essay, you don't have worth 100 pages. So you can't develop more than one character. It has to be very straightforward, very strong main character with supporting characters, and then you must develop that story. And for that to happen, you should also have conflict. In other words, there must be a problem that is kind of indicated or introduced right at the beginning, and then you must develop that to come to a climax and then come to a close. Last but not least, your essay should be 250 to 300 words. Now stay within those number of words. It's very important to note that the more you write, the more mistakes you make. So try and keep within those number of words. And very often, it's a good idea when you go through the proofreading session that you look at a repetition of the same kind of descriptive words. In other words, redundancy. When you use beautiful, pretty, amazing, all these words, and basically they mean the same. So you select the right one for that specific part of your essay. We have identified general challenges that happened in the previous exam, specifically with reference to the NSC exam of 2024. And here they are. Number 1, the appropriate topic has not been selected. Now, we've spoken about that. Then the chosen topic or question is not analyzed properly. So sometimes you look at the topic and you go, oh, I can write about this. But you do not analyze the topic carefully enough so that in your response, you actually cover everything that is required in that specific question. Then also draft or your rough work is not cancelled. Now your rough work would be planning, and it's not those 4 little clouds with the 1 cloud in the middle. That is not a planning. That is when you put your ideas into paragraphs. Planning would be messy. It's what you think about. And sometimes we think about things and then we scratch that out. No, this doesn't make sense to me. And you add this, and there might be a line going to that one, and this I want to link. So if it's nice and neat, your marker knows that you wrote that after you've written your essay. And the problem is, planning or your brainstorming or your whole planning idea, whether it's a mind map or a flow chart or just notes, they are for you. They are not to make the marker happy. It's for you. You don't get marks for it, by the way. But it helps you to organize your thoughts so that you are not repetitive in your writing and that there's a good build-up of ideas to get to the conclusion. And then if you are a fast writer, you might have a first draft. I would suggest that you do not write a first draft in the exam because time is limited. And very often the first draft and the final are exactly the same. So the main reason why you are writing a first draft would be to take the place of the planning, so to speak, which is a waste of time. But whatever rocks your boat, if you feel that you have to write a first draft, hopefully you are a fast writer so that you can actually write and get it done. But after you've done your final one, draw a line through your planning or indicate very clearly that this is planning. Otherwise, the marker will mark your first draft or your planning. And then they'll turn the page and there it is, the final presentation. And then they would have wasted time. So be kind to yourself and to the marker and indicate your planning or draw a neat line through it to indicate that this is your planning. And then, of course, the required length is not adhered to. Generally, we do not penalize you if it's more than the 300 required words. But the more you write, the more mistakes you make. So you are actually shooting yourself in the foot, so to speak. Right, so let's get over into action. Are your bags packed? Because whether you know it or not, you are on a journey. And we are going on a journey today. I want you to quickly think about the first thought that comes to mind. What questions do you have for me? What ideas do you have? Are you excited? Are you bored? Are you a little perturbed because the exams are around the corner? Why would we go on a journey now? Keep those things in mind. You might ask the following questions. Where are we going? Because that's a very important thing. What will I need? And that will depend a lot on where you are going, obviously. Who am I traveling with? Is it only me and you? Or is it a school? Or is it you and your friends? You and a family member? And that will also make a big difference, won't it? And how are we going to travel? Are we going to go by aeroplane? Have you ever been in an aeroplane? Are we going by train? I've never traveled in a train before. I would love to, though. Or are we going by car? Whose car? So lots of questions crop up. And I'm going to give you 5 minutes to quickly write down, remember this is brainstorming, write down responses to those questions, and if you have anything else that you want to add. For example, what will I need? That's very general. I would actually say, what do I need to pack? What clothes do I need to pack for this journey? Right, so I'm going to give you 5 minutes for this, starting now. Congratulations, you have just brainstormed a topic. It's as easy as that. And we actually don't have a topic yet. But I thought that this was a very, very clever way to help you to arrange your thoughts and ideas. Because what you've done is you've actually subdivided your brainstorming in 4 or 5 different main ideas and thus paragraphs. You can give yourself a hand because that is a success. That's what you have done. If you have trouble with that, then it's time to actually ask your teacher or someone you know that's really good at writing to help you with it. Let's consider the following topics. Success is a journey, not a destination. Or the second one, my most memorable journey. Or 3, write an essay in which you include the following statement. I learned one valuable lesson. Choose your travel companions wisely. And then last of these ones, tourism is the lifeblood of a country's economy. Now, when you look at these topics, you can already see this lends itself more to descriptive writing, or this is more narrative, or this is more factual, in other words, more discursive, even argumentative. And then we've got number 5, and that's a picture. It's a train, and then there's one lone figure standing right in the middle with a backpack on his back. That's a response to visual stimuli or an image. Let's take a closer look at the topics. The first one, success is a journey, not a destination. Now remember when we started, I said one of the challenges that was experienced was the fact that the topic, even though it might have been the correct topic for the candidate, the topic wasn't analyzed properly. So only part of the topic was covered. So when you analyze the topic, it actually helps you to find out exactly where you want to go with it. So number 1, success. And here it has to do with you and your knowledge or your pre-knowledge or your idea of what success is all about. Is success about money? Is it about things that you own? Is it the clothes you wear? Is it the car you drive? Is that what you think success is? Or is success happiness, being content, being at peace? You understand what I'm saying? So, or whether you've reached the top of your career ladder, that would also be regarded as some kind of success. And here it is individual. The next one is a journey. Now, a journey could refer to a physical trip. In other words, getting to a vehicle of whatever kind and then driving off somewhere. And then it could also refer to the passing of time. You were on a school journey from grade R to grade 12. 13 years that was totally dedicated to school. That is a journey. And when you look back at your journey, what are your thoughts? Can you remember isolated incidents that made you grow, that taught you lessons, things like that? And then a destination. Now, destination would refer to the end of a trip. It could also refer to realizing a goal or a dream that you have in life. Then the next one, my most memorable journey. My pronoun my would refer to something personal. It's not someone else's journey. It is yours. Then most memorable would refer to a special or a one-of-a-kind or something worth remembering. In other words, it refers to a specific journey. There you can actually distinguish between a physical journey or trip that you undertook with specific people and what you experienced and what you learned from it, or it could refer to a journey, a time in your life, high school, but it would refer to specific aspects, right? So most memorable, something that you will remember for the rest of your life. And then journey, yet again, if it's a trip, it could be literal. And then life, that would be figurative, a time in your life. I selected these topics specifically because this is where the danger arises. Ladies and gents, very often we find that if there's a topic like this, candidates tend to write about the destination more than the trip. And that would be a deviation from the topic. So you spend all of your time talking about the destination, the place that you moved into, the place that you stayed, the fact that it's close to the sea, and whatever you'd like to add to that. But actually here, it refers to how you got there and things that happened on the way. Right, that would be a deviation from the topic. And sometimes a total misinterpretation of topic. And then, unfortunately, you lose quite a lot of marks. The next one, write an essay in which you include the following statement. Now, it doesn't tell you exactly where. So you can start your essay like this, you can end it like this, you can use it somewhere in the middle of your essay. I learned one valuable lesson. Choose your travel companions wisely. So yet again, the pronoun I refers to a personal experience. And then one valuable lesson, just one. You can't discuss 10 different ones, just one. You see how focused you need to be. A specific event or a specific lesson that made you rethink a choice or a decision that you have made. Choose your travel companions. In other words, be specific. Who are they and what did they do? What did they not do? So you need to be specific there and refer to them. How have the people that you surrounded yourself with influenced this lesson that you have learned? Then a very strong one, tourism is the lifeblood of a country's economy. Now, people who take economics or business economics or tourism will have lots to say about this topic. And hopefully you are an argumentative or a discursive type of person. And this is specifically for those people who like facts. Not all of us want to live in La La Land. Some of us want facts. So tourism, this requires specific pre-knowledge and vocabulary. If you take those subjects, then you'll have a knapsack full of vocabulary ideas and, ideas that you can use. Then lifeblood. Now, blood on its own is life, isn't it? If it no longer flows and pumps, there is no life. So lifeblood refers to what is needed to exist or to live. And then a country's economy, and that is something specific as well. The growth of a country's economy. It is very factual. And you may refer to a specific country. You are a South African. You live in South Africa. You have so many examples right around you that constitutes tourism, that actually adds to the economy of the country. So use that for your benefit. And then finally, the picture or the response to a visual or an image. This is a journey on a train. I see a train. There's a single traveler there. It seems to be a male, but it doesn't have to be specifically referred to as male. You understand what I'm saying? So it might just be a figure. It doesn't have to describe that specific person. You can focus on the mode of travel. If I think of a train, for example, I think about different compartments. People do not, a train is not just one long compartment, it's divided into different compartments. And some compartments are more luxurious than others are. And that would also influence your journey, isn't it? You can talk about transport in South Africa in general. The fact that our train system has actually gone down quite a bit, except for the metro trains that drive in or that go in and out of towns. And also then, the Gautrain, it's right here under your noses. It's a very, very good idea. And how that influences our economy. I just think, if I didn't have to use a car every day to get to work, and if I could use a train or a bus for that matter, public transport, it would have made my life so much easier. And I know it's on time and it'll get me where I need to be. So there's a lot to be said for that. And then we can also look at emissions. We look at global warming. We look at, so there's an explosion of thoughts and ideas there. Even though I did not describe the picture because that's not the instruction. You can refer to anything that appears in this picture. Or you can focus on the traveler or the character. And as I said, you don't have to have a male character. This is just a lone character. So focus on the lone, the fact that this character is on his own. What does that say? It might have something to do with relationships, broken relationships, the fact that he ran away or that he was kicked out of the house because he had bad habits. You see how it explodes into multi-million possibilities. And that is what brainstorming does to you. Just looking at the picture actually helps you to unfold stories that even if a whole group in a school selects the same topic, not one essay would be the same. So let's take a quick look. We are looking at the descriptive and the narrative and the whatever essays, but I don't want you to fixate on that. Remember, if you write a narrative essay, there will be elements of description. There will be elements of reflection. So essays are not purely descriptive or narrative or argumentative. Most of the factual ones are more like specific, but even there will be some description of some kind. There might be a reference to an incident, which is slightly narrative. All right, so please do not be focused on the type of essay. Rather, focus on what your sweet spot in writing is, where you did well. And you can go back to previous essays that you've written. Where did you get the highest mark? Even if the language wasn't too bright, the content is what we are looking at. So, descriptive essay, we mainly create pictures in words, using as many senses as possible to make the description clear. In other words, you must not depend on only what you see. It's also what you hear and what you smell. and to a certain extent to what you taste and what you feel. And those senses will lead you to memories. It's just how it works. I smell something and it reminds me of something else. And I'm sure in your life somewhere there is that one thing that unlocks a myriad of memories, whether they're good or bad, that you can work with. And here I need to emphasize that the most successful essays usually comes from the heart. Your knowledge, your vocabulary, your pre-knowledge, all of that comes from the mind. But good writing, effective writing, comes from the heart. So it has to be something of yourself that you put on the paper. The introductory sentence should create expectation to draw the reader in. There's nothing like a horrible introductory sentence. It was a Wednesday. The sun was shining. Suddenly, it started to rain. It just doesn't make sense. And it starts boring. It's really, when I see an essay like that, I go, oh, no, one of the 10,000 that look exactly the same. You need to create expectation that, oh, what's going to happen next? That is what we want in good writing. Of course, you can't only have an opening sentence that goes, oh, you have to carry on. You have to carry that expectation for 250 to 300 words. So this is where your planning comes in. You need to know how you want to build on that. Very important, avoid sentences that are too long. Very often we find essays where the whole paragraph is one single sentence. And then there's a comma somewhere, and then there's a full stop right at the end. And nothing in between. You have lost the reader's attention in line 1 already. Make sure that when you write that you use punctuation effectively, that your sentences vary. Sometimes you want to create a dragging effect, and that would be a longer type sentence. But very often you want to create tension. And when you create tension, you use shorter sentences, almost like gunshots. You know, you are waiting for the next one to drop. And that creates tension, specifically in narrative essays. A discursive essay. When you look at the discursive essay, you analyze the argument for and against the topic. So you have two sides of a coin, and you need to make sure that they are balanced. The introductory statement or sentence should be a strong sentence or statement or a statistic. Sometimes in discursive and argumentative essays, you even might want to shock the reader into taking notice. So you need to find something that's going to have that wow factor. Right. Offer supporting evidence for the arguments, and this is where paper 2 and sometimes question 1 of paper 1 comes from. Your teacher had mentioned the Peel method very often. Make a point, give an example, and explain, and link it back to the topic. Even if you don't link it so much, make sure that you make a point, give an example, explain, because that is what factual writing is all about. It's also very important that you give that supportive evidence for the arguments. Otherwise, you make a very good argument, but you don't follow it up with anything, and then it loses impact. And then right at the end, you have to come to a particular conclusion. In other words, as a reader, I should know exactly what your point of view is, what your interpretation is, and where you stand in terms of this topic. Include a clear, strong, and convincing statement at the end of your essay. Narrative essay, as we said before, you create clear, well-defined characters. And this is where your reference to paper 2 comes in again. You don't have to refer to the protagonist or the antagonist. But when you create your characters, you must make sure that there is a definite indication that this character is the good character, the main character, the hero in the story, so to speak, and that other characters are supporting. Or you may have 2 main characters, for that matter. Make sure that they are well-rounded so that the reader knows exactly how they feel, what they are like, what their background is. Give them a name. Let them speak in the narrative essay, but make sure that it doesn't become a glorified dialogue. So make sure that it's there, that it is interspersed with it, but strong characters. Include conflict. Now, conflict could be on many different levels. Number 1, it could be conflict outside. Now, that is where you have one person that's angry with the other one about something that happened or something that did not happen, and then they're angry with one another and they don't speak to one another, and when they do get together there's a verbal shouting going on. I wouldn't say that you have to put in your fists, but something that is very clear that they don't agree on. That is followed up by inner conflict. Very often misunderstandings come from that inner conflict. You in yourself do not feel confident, or you had a very rough childhood, and now you actually color any picture, any relationship with your previous experience, and that is why you react the way you do. Then it might also be conflict with the situation. You would love to go to university, but you know that your parents do not have the money to send you. And that is a problem with the situation. You can't do anything about it. Your parents can't do anything about it either. But you can find other ways that would be your conflict in the situation. And if you use that effectively and you plan carefully, you will have a story worth reading, and that I, as the reader, would go, oh, that was good. Right. Then, as I said, you develop the storyline. You should know where you want to go with it. Now, in the planning or the brainstorming phase, that would start to take shape. That's why planning is so important. You need to know where you want to go with the story. And therefore, your plot actually needs to be quite clear. What is the problem? Who are involved? What is the solution? And how does it conclude? Easy as that. But in writing, sometimes you get a surprise or 2, and you can even include that if you're a good writer. But please do not include, so, if you have a problem with relationships, this and that and that. You have not become a psychologist overnight. You can't do it online. You still need to finish grade 12. So please do not give us a little moral lesson at the end. It actually takes away all the creativity and all the intrigue that a reader experiences while reading this essay. There should also be a definite climax. In other words, that point where something has got to give. It must be clear. It must work up to a point where we are all holding our breath to know what's going to happen next. And then a suitable resolution. Now, the resolution is when the problem is solved. It does not necessarily mean that the story needs to end and they lived happily ever after. We know in reality it doesn't happen, but remember, this is creative writing. You can send it any which way you want. If you are a good writer, you can actually add some intrigue at the end, that it seems as though it has come to a conclusion. But then there's a little tail that just twists. And that makes for very good writing. Now, the pictures or the images, the question is about the response to visual stimuli. This is generally the best and the safest choice if you are writing paper 3. Topics with words, sentences, phrases, quotes, they are lovely, but at some point they become difficult because there are lots of elements that you have to cover. In visual stimuli, it is what you see and what you focus on. And as I said, you don't describe the picture. You describe elements that draw your attention in that specific picture. The only prerequisite is that there has to be a link between the picture or the image and your essay. That's the most important thing. And then also give your essay a suitable title so that the reader knows what this is all about. And that would actually also direct the type of essay or the essay that you are writing. We are going to go on a little activity hunt. I told you you're on a journey. Now you're at the next stop. So I'm going to ask you to choose one of those topics. And I will even go back a couple of slides. I hope that I can do that. You know, technology and me aren't that good friends. But you choose one of the topics. Then I want you to brainstorm words or ideas that come to mind when you think about that topic. And allow your brain to flow freely. Do not control it. This is not a control exercise. This is an exercise in free writing. Then after you've done that, you identify 3 or 4 key ideas that you would like to develop. Now, when you do brainstorming, you'll find that it's like scattered ideas. It's like you're like a scatterbrain, you know. This idea comes up, then that one, and then that one, and then that one. And then when you look at all these ideas, you will find that there is a pattern to it. You need to find the pattern. Look at ideas and thoughts that actually go together. Sometimes, even while you are brainstorming, you automatically put ideas together. So at the end, you have a group of ideas already that you can extend into a paragraph, because that's what's going to happen then. So create a skeleton for the essay. You're not writing an essay. You are creating a skeleton. And the choice of words and all of those things will then become the meat and the muscle that you put around the skeleton. You will add those details later. This is just a skeleton. Where are you going? Where's the head? Where's the tail? We don't start with the head and the tail, by the way. We start with the brainstorming, the body. And after that, we can build the head and the toes. Then I want you to also consider an introductory sentence or paragraph that will grab the attention. And then also write a conclusory sentence or paragraph, very short and sweet, that brings the essay full circle. And you have exactly 10 minutes for that. So let me just try and scroll back so that you have the topics in front of you. Almost there. Almost there, almost there. I'm sure you remember one of those topics at least, so think about them. Unfortunately, I can't add the picture essay topic because it's on a separate page, but we can do our best to show you the others, but I'm sure you remember the picture. This takes a while. Okay. Almost there, sure. But your journey has been long and arduous. Okay, there you are. So you remember the picture as well. So there are these 4 topics, and then the fifth one is the picture. You have 10 minutes to do those things. Number 1, choose a topic. Number 2, you need to brainstorm the ideas. Number 3, try and put ideas together. Number 4, try an introductory sentence. It doesn't have to be a paragraph, just an introductory sentence that will actually blow your mind. And then a conclusory sentence, one that will bring your essay full circle, but if it has a little twist, who knows? Right, you have 10 minutes for that. Welcome back. I hope you enjoyed this quick exercise. Of course, that is about the time that you have for your planning for your essay. So if you did not manage to properly do all the steps that were required, you need to practice those steps. How do you do that? You actually go to other topics, previous topics from previous exam papers. And then you practice, because you put the timer on 10 minutes and you try and time, and so that you can do a planning within that specific time. That would give you enough time to actually properly write your essay and then also proofread and edit. So let's take a look at possible problem areas, things that you might have done right. Let's focus on that rather than on the wrong. If your ideas or your words flowed, in other words, there was like a flow of thought and ideas, you have selected the topic that is right for you. If not, I would suggest that you select another one. But this is a good example to show you how some topics, even though you think you have a lot to say, they kind of hit a wall. And the sooner you get rid of it and move on to another one, the better. Brainstorming should take a few minutes. It should not take 20 minutes. That's why I said 10 minutes is the allotted time for you to do your thorough brainstorming, ideas, selection, putting together the paragraphs, and then your introductory and your conclusory sentence. Group the ideas from the brainstorming phase and create 3 or 4 main ideas. It's always very good to think about 3 or 4 paragraphs. Remember, this does not include the introductory paragraph and the conclusory paragraph. It's actually just the 3 or 4 body paragraphs. Elaborate on or develop each main idea to form a paragraph. Remember what I told you? Using the Peel method. Or if you're writing a narrative, let the characters develop or let the situation develop. Any which way you like. Now you are only ready to write your introductory paragraph. And it's important. It's like when you introduce someone else to, let's say you have this love of your life and you like this person no end. And it's the first time you introduce that person to your mom or dad. But you don't know that person for very long. You have not had a good conversation. You don't know what this person likes or what they are like, or, you just like what you saw. It's very difficult to introduce someone if you don't know them. In the same way, you can't introduce a thought or idea or an essay or a story if you don't know what it's about or where you are going with it. And then in your conclusory paragraph, that conclusory sentence, remember, it should also make a statement, but it should bring everything together full circle. It very often happens that a candidate would include new information or a new idea in the conclusory paragraph. That is not going to work. Remember, your conclusion is the end. That is when you go to the car to leave after you visited. You need to get into the car, say your goodbyes. It was a very nice visit. Goodbye, let's see each other soon, and then you go. You don't reintroduce a new idea or a topic. Remember, this is your planning to save time. 10 minutes. You might not have enough time to write a full first draft. And I say that because very often your first draft and your final are exactly the same. And you can indicate editing on your final essay, as long as you do it neatly. When we look at proofreading and editing, after you've written your final essay, you need to proofread and edit it. What does that mean? To proofread means to read through your essay and make sure that it actually makes sense. Sometimes we write things and we think this is brilliant, and then we read it again. What was I thinking? So that is just to see whether you have actually covered all the parts that you wanted to cover. And remember that if you're planning and your final essay is slightly different, when you write, you might add things, you might leave things out because it's a better idea. Don't be worried about that. It doesn't have to be a mirror image of one another, as long as the main ideas are kind of the same. Right, now, when you edit, you need to do it in pen and very neatly. In other words, do not scratch it out. One line is enough, but do not use pencil. Use a pen, write neatly. I would also just emphasize the fact that you should not use the margins to the left or to the right, not in the prelim exam and not in the final either. In the final exam, you'll have answer books, and those books have a little frame around it with open spaces. You're not allowed to write in those spaces for very obvious reasons. Practice now already that you stay within the lines, no margins. What do you need to look out for? Number one, grammar, any spelling errors. Simple things like two, using the wrong word, whether and whether, there and there, things like that. Things that we actually miss. It's so obvious that we actually read over it. Then also punctuation. As I said, use punctuation effectively, and we do not only have full stops and commas. We have exclamation marks, we have question marks, we have colons, we have brackets. Remember, we use brackets when we add extra information, or if a character speaks and it's something extra that you want to add to that character to make it quirky or more descriptive. Tenses. Every essay has a specific, could be written in a specific tense. For example, narrative essays are usually written in the past tense, as opposed to discursive and argumentative essays, which are often written in the present tense. But make sure that the tenses actually make sense. So if you start in the present tense, keep it into the present tense. If you want to refer to things that happened many years ago, then obviously you can go to the past tense. But don't jump between the tenses in one paragraph or one idea. Then I also refer to sentence structure. Longer sentences become long-winded. It might even become boring, and you might lose interest, you might lose meaning. Shorter sentences, stronger, they create tension. Think about that when you write. Then, count the number of words. It's extremely important. And then write down the number of words that you used right at the bottom. And with that, I quickly want to just stop and remind you that we are busy with a language and we are writing. Yes, it's important that you keep within the number of words, but you are not doing a math problem. So please do not write until your words are done and then you stop. So more important is the creative thought, the creative writing, the art of writing, the expression. And then you count them afterwards. And if you find you've gone way over the number of words, then you can delete some of the things. But really, to sit and to count every line and add them up and get to the mark at the total at the bottom, it's like a math problem. That is counterproductive because your focus is on the number of words and not your creative thinking. So don't waste your brain energy on that. Draw a line through the planning or the rough draft, I said before, or indicate it clearly. Planning, nice big bold letters. You have a little bit of homework. Take the planning for the essay done during the session, that which you've just done. If you are happy or content with your planning, write the full essay. If you feel that another topic will render a better essay, in other words, you can write better, do another planning and then write the final essay. Use the checklist provided by your teacher to check your essay. And I know the checklist has been shared a number of times. If they don't have them, ask them to refer to the subject facilitators, because they'll be more than happy to share the checklists. In summary, sorry about that, the success of an essay depends on selecting the topic that is right for you. Thorough brainstorming and planning will help you write a good essay. Proofread and edit your essay properly. Check that you have covered all the instructions in the brief. Now, the brief would be the topic. Count the number of words used and write it at the end of your essay. Indicate your planning clearly by drawing a line through it, or, as I said, indicating it in bold. But most of all, candidates, grade 12s, I hope that you enjoy the process of writing. It is open and free, and it's the one platform where you get to just be you and put that on paper. Our next lesson will happen on the 18th of August, which is next Monday, from 14:30 to 1600 hours, and we are going to focus on paper 1, the comprehension test. See you then. Goodbye.